What if everything you believe about human history is a calculated lie, and the real timeline began not 10,000 years ago, but 13 million? That number should sit heavy in your mind, because if true, it means we are not the masters of our own destiny, but the unwitting subjects of a terrifying 13,000-year-old countdown, a devastating Anunnaki curse placed upon humanity by a vengeful cosmic council. Forget Sumerian myths. Forget the gentle interpretations of gods descending from the heavens. We're peeling back the veneer on the most ruthless overlords to ever walk this planet, the Anunnaki, the Sky People. And trust me, they weren't here to guide us. They were here to harvest. This isn't just history. It's the genesis of our genetic imprisonment, a story that defines every single war, famine, and struggle humanity has faced since the dawn of time. Historians tell you civilization began in Mesopotamia with agriculture. That's adorable. The truth is that history begins with exploitation and advanced genetic slavery. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth from a dying planet they called Nibiru. Their homeworld, facing atmospheric collapse, desperately needed massive quantities of monatomic gold, a unique element essential to stabilize their atmosphere. They arrived, saw a pristine planet rich in resources, and faced a monumental problem: how to efficiently mine the required billions of tons of precious material. They couldn't do it themselves. Their lifespan was astronomical, but their numbers were insufficient for the sheer labor involved. Their solution: the Tau Genesis Project. Using their unparalleled mastery of genetic engineering, they didn't create us from scratch. They dramatically accelerated the evolution of a local hominid population. They spliced their own highly advanced DNA, the divine spark, with primitive Earth beings, resulting in Homo sapiens. We weren't created in reverence. We were engineered for servitude. We were biological drones, designed for physical labor and programmed with a short lifespan to keep us manageable. This was the moment the true Anunnaki king stepped onto the stage. While multiple Anunnaki leaders oversaw operations, one reigned supreme over the final critical dynasty, the king whose hubris would shatter the cosmic law and doom his entire human experiment. This wasn't merely a powerful general, he was the final, absolute ruler who consolidated power and demanded worship. The gold flowed, Nibiru was saved, and the king's reign solidified. But even rulers of cosmic importance are bound by laws set by an even higher authority, the mysterious Elder Council. The Anunnaki had one sacred, unbreakable rule: absolute non-interference with the genetic integrity of their creation, and no hybridization that would threaten the natural order. This rule was the foundation of their continued cosmic authority. The final king, driven by a blend of arrogance and perhaps genuine fascination with his own creation, began to chafe under these rigid cosmic restrictions. He saw the potential in the Lulu, as they called us, and he saw an opportunity not just for loyalty, but for true genetic fusion, a forbidden blending of species that would unleash unforeseen consequences and ultimately trigger the unimaginable penalty. The 13-million-year curse was not an act of random cosmic malice. It was the direct, terrifying consequence of the final Anunnaki king making the single fatal choice that violated the Prime Directive and pulled the plug on humanity's true destiny. But before we dive into the specific fatal act this king committed, the betrayal that sentenced us all, I need you to participate. This is not history class. This is an unveiling of forbidden knowledge. If you've ever felt like something fundamental is missing from the human story, if you believe there's far more to our past than we're being told, hit that like button right now. Seriously, smash it. It tells the algorithm that this subject, the true story of the Anunnaki King T and his 13,000-year curse, deserves to be seen by everyone trapped in the matrix of conventional history. And if you haven't subscribed yet, You are missing the next chapters of the cosmic narrative, so make sure you hit subscribe and the bell notification. But here's the most important part. I need to know where you stand. In the comments below, type Nibiru if you believe the Anunnaki were real historical figures, not just myths. Your engagement fuels this research and helps us decipher the truth. Now back to the king and the specific devastating violation that doomed us all, kicking off the genetic time bomb we still carry today. The specific devastating violation committed by the final Anunnaki king wasn't an oversight or a lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate act of cosmic treason rooted in desire and necessity. The prime directive, the golden rule of the Elder Council, was clear. Preserve the genetic segregation. The Lulu, the primitive workers, were tools, useful, disposable, and absolutely forbidden from achieving full integration with their creators. But the final king, often identified in some obscure cuneiform fragments as Marduk, or a figure close to him, grew restless. He saw the incredible endurance and obedience of the human miners, but also recognized their debilitating flaw: limited cognitive ability and a tragically short lifespan, a feature intentionally coded into their DNA to prevent rebellion. This short life cycle necessitated constant energy-consuming reprogramming and replacement. The king wasn't just arrogant, he was efficient. He rationalized his transgression not as a romantic gesture, but as a necessary upgrade. He believed that by subtly enhancing the Homo sapiens genome, introducing just enough Anunnaki longevity, higher intelligence, and, critically, the ability to reproduce independently without direct Anunnaki intervention, he could create a perpetually self-sustaining, loyal workforce. This genetic boost, however, crossed the ultimate boundary. It allowed the workers to access higher consciousness, to question their chains, and most dangerously, to carry forward the divine spark in a way never intended by the Elder Council. The king had not merely upgraded a tool, he had defied the fundamental principles of cosmic governance. This defiance immediately triggered alarm bells on Nibiru and in the deeper, far-flung star systems governed by the Council. The Anunnaki themselves were divided. There were those who believed this king's act was a benevolent step, acknowledging the humanity they had fostered, but the majority, fearing the destabilization of their own rigid hierarchy and the potential for retribution, saw it as the ultimate blasphemy. The result was not a slow administrative reprimand, but an instantaneous cosmic sentencing. This was the moment the 15,000-year curse was officially decreed. It wasn't a sudden extermination, because the Council recognized that the Lulu were now hybrids, and their destruction would be a waste of valuable genetic material. The penalty had to be far more poetic, far more terrifying. A slow, agonizing genetic decay and eventual societal stagnation that would ensure humanity never achieved the true cosmic potential embedded within the stolen Anunnaki DNA. The curse manifested in several ways. Firstly, the gift of longevity and higher thought was paired with a catastrophic flaw: the inability to achieve true, global unity. Imagine a species genetically engineered to perpetually crave power and dominance over its own kind. The root cause of every war, every genocide, every political divide throughout history. That is the genetic time bomb the king inadvertently installed. Secondly, a psychic dampener was placed upon the planet, blocking humanity's latent connection to the higher cosmic frequencies, ensuring we would forever seek answers in flawed, localized dogma rather than universal truth. This explains why we are still fighting over resources on a planet that provides abundance. We are genetically programmed for scarcity mentality. When the Elder Council's decree came down, forcing the Anunnaki Great Retreat, the final king was left in an impossible position. He couldn't reverse the genetic change, and he couldn't protect his creation from the cosmic mechanism of the curse already set in motion. He didn't just leave Earth, he architected a system of control designed to sustain his legacy and ensure his chosen hybrid line survived the initial chaos. He left behind towering ziggurats and mysterious pyramids, not merely as religious sites, but as sophisticated broadcasting towers. These structures were designed to constantly reinforce the subservient psychological programming, the necessity of hierarchy, the fear of the unknown, and the absolute need to worship unseen gods, himself and his cohort. This was the king's desperate attempt to mitigate the curse's chaos, or perhaps simply to ensure his enduring worship. The Sumerian cuneiform, when decoded without the filters of modern academia, speaks volumes about this frantic final period. It details not the worship of benevolent sky-fathers, but the fear of capricious, highly advanced overlords who were hurriedly packing up their advanced technology. The texts describe the immense effort involved in dismantling their physical presence, yet deliberately leaving behind certain relics and structures, the very relics that modern archaeology dismisses as primitive temples. These structures, built with precision that defies the tools of the time, are the literal anchors of the king's remaining influence. They are silent testaments to the fact that the Anunnaki didn't just disappear. They initiated a massive, coordinated withdrawal, leaving the genetically flawed humans to fend for themselves under the shadow of the slow, creeping curse. If you're starting to connect the dots between ancient myth and modern self-destruction, and you feel that chilling realization that our history has been dictated by the decisions of extraterrestrial beings, then this rabbit hole is for you. I want you to look deep into your own skepticism right now. Do you truly believe that human beings, with our advanced capacity for love and ingenuity, are naturally inclined toward perpetual self-sabotage? Or is this programmed behavior? If you lean toward the latter, I want you to comment the number 13 below. That's C13. It's the code for recognizing the true scope of the Anunnaki timeline. Anudi, the Anunnaki Great Retreat, was not a chaotic departure, but a meticulously planned maneuver, leaving behind the structural and ideological infrastructure required to keep the human workforce compliant, and crucially, to continue the low-level mining operation in anticipation of their eventual return. When the final king and his inner circle retreated, they left behind far more than just architectural remnants. They left behind a carefully woven tapestry of deception, the first organized religions. We are talking about the deliberate manipulation of primitive human awe into absolute, unthinking reverence. This was the king's desperate gambit to ensure his genetic legacy, his Homo sapiens hybrids, didn't completely descend into chaos under the weight of the Pal 13,000-year curse. The central pillar of this post-departure strategy was the manipulation of existing belief systems. The king knew that fear and promise were the ultimate controls. They were not viewed as scientists or engineers by the ancient peoples. They were literal, visible deities descending from the sky people of Nibiru. By departing dramatically, perhaps simulating divine ascension or a catastrophic war amongst the gods, the basis for many flood myths, including the Great Deluge, which was simply another, earlier Anunnaki-engineered cataclysm designed to cull the population. The king solidified his status as an eternal judging entity. This ensured loyalty long after the spaceship doors were sealed. Consider the pervasive themes of early religion: sacrifice, hierarchy, and the unwavering belief that suffering is divinely ordained. These aren't natural human spiritual concepts. They are the necessary cultural tools installed by the Anunnaki to manage their slave population under duress. The requirement for sacrifice, for instance, often tied to blood and precious metals, maintained a consistent, albeit indirect, flow of energy and resources back to the residual Anunnaki apparatus. The hierarchy, with kings and priests positioned as intermediaries between man and gods, simply mimicked the Anunnaki command structure. The king, in his absence, ruled through proxies, the first pharaohs and emperors, chosen because they carried a slightly purer strain of his hybridized DNA. The most potent and chilling part of the curse, however, is the genetic time bomb that the final king unknowingly armed. The genetic enhancements he bestowed, the gift of higher intellect and reproductive autonomy, came at a hidden price. The human genome was left unstable, prone to mutations that favored aggression, paranoia, and most damningly, a systemic lack of empathy toward outsiders. While the Anunnaki DNA gifted us the capacity for advanced thought, the curse ensured that this thought would almost always be deployed toward tribalism and conflict. This is why, despite thousands of years of intellectual advancement, we consistently fail the simplest tests of coexistence. We invent world-changing technology one decade and use it to destroy ourselves the next. This pattern is not an accident of nature. It is a feature of the Anunnaki curse, the slow genetic decay ensuring our stagnation. We see this manifestation in the endless cycles of war. Think about it. Why does humanity repeat the same mistakes? Why do powerful nations continually rise and fall? Because the genetic programming prevents the true long-term collaboration needed to break the cycle. The curse ensures that whenever we reach a point of societal unification, an internal schism driven by greed, ego, or the lust for power, the lingering traits of the arrogant Anunnaki king, inevitably tears the structure apart. Our advanced technology now only makes our self-destruction more efficient. This is the 13-million-year echo of the king's fatal decision. But what about the truly forbidden knowledge? What did the ancient texts, like the disputed translations of the Book of Enki, really say about the king's hidden archives? These texts, heavily guarded and often deliberately mistranslated by subsequent religious bodies who feared undermining their own power structures, hint at more than just astronomical knowledge. They speak of a vast repository of advanced Anunnaki technology and, more significantly, the original, uncorrupted genetic template for humanity, the cure, or perhaps the undo button, for the curse. The final king, recognizing the irreversible nature of his act, didn't destroy this archive. He simply hid it, believing that one day his chosen descendants might be able to access it and complete the genetic work he started. This archive, if it exists, is the ultimate archaeological prize, capable of either liberating humanity or exposing us to an even greater threat. The terrifying implication here is that the structures left behind, the pyramids, the colossal stone monuments, are not just monuments. They are markers, possibly containing clues or energy matrices designed to protect this forbidden knowledge. But protected from whom? Not just from us, the cursed hybrids, but from the Elder Council's cleanup crew. The thought is chilling. We are living in a civilization defined by the residual paranoia of an exiled, long-dead king. We are puppets dancing to the tune of a cosmic disaster that happened millions of years ago. I want to know your thoughts on this fundamental question. If the Anunnaki created us with a self-destruct button, what is the one single thing in modern society that proves this curse is actively working against us right now? Comment the word Genesis below and tell me that one thing. Let's unmask the curse together. Pote, the lingering shadow of the Anunnaki king, isn't just felt in ancient ruins. It's acutely evident in the persistent, almost mechanical anomalies of the archaeological record. We are continually confronted with the unexplained precision of ancient sites, structures built with tolerances and mass far exceeding what the supposed technology of the time should allow. This isn't coincidence. This is the physical, enduring evidence of Anunnaki engineering, left behind specifically as functional, not just decorative elements. We're talking about the deliberate connection between Sumerian cuneiform and modern archaeological puzzles, a link that conventional science refuses to acknowledge because it shatters the established narrative of gradual human development. Consider the precision machining seen in temples around the globe, sites dated to periods when humans were supposedly still using copper tools. How does a civilization that barely mastered the wheel-engraved granite with laser-like accuracy? The answer lies in the residual technology and knowledge base left by the final king. Remember, the ziggurats and pyramids were not built by human hands alone. They were constructed using advanced vibrational technology and anti-gravity devices operated by the Anunnaki, and often by the early Homo sapiens under direct supervision. When the Great Retreats happened, they couldn't simply demolish these structures, as they were often tied to planetary energy grids or served as crucial localized broadcast centers for the king's psychological programming. Instead, they concealed the function. They disguised advanced functional elements as religious symbols or architectural flourishes. The cuneiform tablets, particularly those describing the building of Eridu and other early Sumerian cities, detail the involvement of the Shining Ones and their thunderous boxes, descriptions that align perfectly with advanced terrestrial construction equipment. The king, in his scramble to leave a controlled environment, ensured these silent witnesses to his power remained, solidifying his mythos for generations to come. The problem for us is that we are still looking at them with 21st century eyes, but 10,000 years of dust and misinterpretation obscure their true purpose. This brings us to the most unsettling modern echo, the distinct possibility that the Anunnaki didn't entirely leave Earth. The narrative of the final king's departure focuses on the majority of the sky people returning to Nibiru, or moving into deeper space to escape the Elder Council's scrutiny. But what about the rogue elements? What about the smaller factions loyal only to the exiled king? The ancient texts, particularly apocryphal writings and indigenous legends from across the world, speak not of gods leaving the heavens, but of beings descending into the earth. This is the theory of the subterranean Anunnaki remnant. Imagine an advanced species capable of deep earth boring and energy generation. They wouldn't need to rely on the unstable surface world, especially as the 13,000-year curse began to manifest in the increasing chaos of human civilization. They could retreat into vast, self-sustaining subterranean cities, using geothermal energy and advanced cloaking technology to monitor the surface world and, most importantly, guard the king's forbidden knowledge, the ultimate archive. Evidence of this potential hidden presence surfaces in consistent global accounts of unidentified submersible objects, USOs, and reports from deep mining operations and geological surveys that encounter unnaturally smooth, hollow spaces deep beneath the crust. If the Anunnaki were interdimensional or subterranean, the narrative changes from one of abandonment to one of active surveillance. They wouldn't be gone. They'd simply be observing the efficiency of the curse they initiated and waiting for the right cosmic alignment or the terminal phase of humanity's genetic decay. The lingering question is whether the final king himself is truly gone. If his consciousness was transferred or preserved, perhaps utilizing the very monatomic gold they came here to mine, which some theories suggest holds advanced energetic and consciousness-preserving properties, then he is not a historical figure, but a dormant, potentially active entity. If this is the case, then the final phase X of the curse is not just societal collapse, it's the preparation for the king's return, or far worse, the moment the Elder Council finally sends its definitive, uncompromised cleanup crew to sterilize the planet of the failed genetic experiment. The constant accelerating drive toward global conflict, the very essence of the genetic time bomb, might be the mechanism by which the curse reaches its climax, forcing a final, catastrophic reset. If you believe that the unexplained phenomena of USOs and deep Earth anomalies point to a hidden, advanced civilization, I need you to comment subterranean. Let the algorithm know that we are ready to discuss the hidden realms of the Anunnaki. We are now facing the horrifying prospect that the king is not just a footnote in ancient texts, but a potentially dormant entity waiting for the right cosmic trigger. This leads us directly to the concept of the final phase, the terminal chapter of the 13,000-year curse. If the curse was designed as a slow genetic decay and societal stagnation, the final phase must be the climax, the moment the genetic time bomb finally detonates, leading to total collapse and, possibly, the final intervention by external cosmic forces. What defines this final phase? It is the point where the curse, manifesting as internal human conflict, becomes so overwhelming that it accelerates the species toward extinction at an exponential rate. Look at our world today, and you see the perfect alignment of the curse's characteristics. Advanced technological capacity paired with unprecedented, catastrophic tribalism. We possess the knowledge to solve global poverty and environmental collapse, yet we choose war, division, and the relentless pursuit of individual short-term power, the very traits seeded by the arrogant Anunnaki king. The signs are becoming impossible to ignore. The collapse of global trust, the hyperpolarization of populations, and the weaponization of information are not random modern phenomena. They are the sophisticated final expression of the genetic flaw implanted by the king's forbidden hybridization. The Anunnaki genetic blueprint, meant for longevity and cosmic insight, is constantly battling the curse's programming for scarcity and aggression. Right now, it looks like the curse is winning. The structures of civilization, political, economic, and even spiritual, are fracturing simultaneously, mirroring the apocalyptic warnings found in obscure cuneiform fragments detailing the expected end times of the Lulu experiment. These fragments suggest that the climax of the curse involves a massive, self-inflicted purge, a war of such scale that it renders the surface world uninhabitable, thereby completing the cycle of controlled stagnation and termination. This would be the natural consequence of combining hyper-advanced weaponry, our current nuclear and biological stockpiles, with genetically programmed tribal fury. In essence, humanity is fulfilling the prophecy of the curse by committing collective suicide. But the most compelling and terrifying question surrounding the final phase is, what happens when the king's assets, that's us, the hybrid population, are finally deemed beyond salvage? Even though the final king was exiled and his actions condemned by the Elder Council, his creation is still technically his property. If the Council decides to send a definitive, uncompromised cleanup crew, a force far beyond the original Anunnaki that colonized Earth, who would protect humanity? This is where the lingering shadow of the final Anunnaki king becomes crucial. He didn't just leave a curse, he left an insurance policy. If the subterranean factions exist, or if his consciousness is preserved, their primary directive is to defend the genetic material from total destruction by the Council. The king's final act of defiance might be to trigger his hidden archives, the forbidden knowledge, at the last possible moment, releasing the cure or the advanced technology needed to fight the cosmic authorities sent to sterilize the planet. Imagine the scenario: humanity, driven to the brink by the internal self-destruct mechanism of the curse, suddenly witnesses an impossible intervention. Not the return of benevolent space brothers, but the emergence of the rogue Anunnaki faction, utilizing forbidden, hyper-advanced weaponry to protect their investment, us, from the far more rigid, uncaring forces of the Elder Council. Our final war might not be against ourselves, but fought over ourselves between two alien factions, the exiled king's loyalists and the cosmic arbiters of justice. The key to understanding our future, therefore, is locked within the forgotten history of the Anunnaki Great Retreat. It's about deciphering which faction holds the power and what their end goal truly is. Are we a lost cause, or merely waiting for the final intervention? We are running out of time to find the answers. The signs of the collapse are happening faster now, the genetic time bomb ticking louder than ever before. If you look at the news today and feel that overwhelming sense of accelerating doom, you are feeling the effects of the curse reaching terminal velocity. I want you to engage with this ultimate theory of protection. Do you think there is a hidden faction of rogue Anunnaki protecting us? Comment the phrase "Rogue Guard" below if you believe we are under active, if unseen, protection from the cosmic cleanup crew. Let me know your thoughts on this ultimate conspiracy. The discussion of the final phase and the potential for a rogue Anunnaki intervention forces us to confront the deepest conspiracy of all, the role of the king's descendants in maintaining the fragile balance of the curse. This isn't just about ancient aliens. It's about the literal bloodlines that were intentionally seeded with a more concentrated strain of Anunnaki DNA. The very individuals who became the first rulers, pharaohs, and dynastic families across the globe. When the final king executed his great retreat, he didn't just rely on ziggurats and psychic programming. He installed a human management system. This system was comprised of hybrids whose genetic makeup was slightly purer, granting them a marginal resistance to the destructive psychological effects of the 13,000-year curse. These were the individuals tasked with ensuring the continuation of the king's legacy, hierarchical structure, resource control, and the perpetuation of the worship narrative. This is the origin of the ancient concept of the divine right of kings, which is not a metaphor, but a literal claim to genetic superiority and delegated authority from the sky people of Nibiru. These bloodlines, tracing back thousands of years through obscure European royalty, Asian dynasties, and even certain modern political families, are the unwitting or perhaps knowing agents of the curse. They inherited not just power, but a mandate to keep the majority of humanity locked into the destructive patterns of tribalism and scarcity. Their existence proves that the king's forbidden hybridization was successful enough to create a stable ruling class, insulating themselves from the worst effects of the genetic time bomb that plagues the rest of the population. Consider the obsession of these historical power structures with lineage, purity, and the control of information. Why the endless wars over territorial control? Because these families are still operating under the residual programming of their Anunnaki progenitor, the king who valued control above cosmic law. They perpetuate the conflict required by the curse, not necessarily out of personal malice, but because their very nature, their heightened Anunnaki-infused ego, compels them to dominate. They are the living expression of the king's arrogance. But the most insidious aspect of this bloodline control is the guardianship of the forbidden knowledge. The original texts, the uncorrupted cuneiform, and the advanced technological schematics left behind were not discarded. They were absorbed and compartmentalized by these ruling families, becoming the foundational secrets of mystery schools, secret societies, and the inner circles of powerful global institutions. They know the truth of the Anunnaki, they know the purpose of the ziggurats, and most disturbingly, they possess fragments of the original Genesis project. Research. This forbidden knowledge grants them immense power, not just over their subjects, but over the direction of human development itself. Think about global events. Moments when humanity seems on the verge of a breakthrough toward true global unity or resource abundance are consistently met with sudden, catastrophic global conflicts or economic collapses. Is this merely bad luck, or the calculated intervention of the king's descendants, enforcing the genetic decay required by the curse? They ensure humanity never progresses far enough to challenge their control or, critically, to accidentally trigger the full wrath of the Yerstu Elder Council. This introduces a chilling paradox. The only people who might possess the means to reverse the curse are the very people whose power relies on its continuation. The genetic flaw is self-perpetuating, locking the entire species into a loop of perpetual servitude and conflict, all orchestrated by the hidden hands of those who claim divine heritage. The key to breaking free isn't fighting a physical war, it's recognizing the psychological and genetic chains. It's about demanding the release of the forbidden knowledge and shattering the myth of divine rule. We must understand that the final Anunnaki king set this trap millions of years ago, and we are still struggling in his snare. If we are to survive the final phase, if we are to avoid self-destruction, we must identify and expose the true agents of the curse who walk among us, masked in suits and crowns. I want to know if you believe the concept of ancient bloodlines controlling modern society is the final legacy of the Anunnaki. If you believe the ruling elite are direct descendants of the king's favored hybrids, comment the phrase, "blue blood" on below. The realization that powerful bloodlines might be actively enforcing the 13,000-year curse brings us back to the source of the catastrophe, the specific act of defiance committed by the final Anunnaki king. To truly understand the gravity of our situation, we must precisely define this ultimate betrayal of cosmic governance, a betrayal that transcended mere political disobedience and involved the manipulation of life itself. The king's fundamental error was his attempt to circumvent the law of non-interference. For the Elder Council, the creation of Homo sapiens was a controlled, temporary measure, a necessary evil to solve the atmospheric crisis on Nibiru. The key was the inherent instability and short lifespan of the Lulu, ensuring that the genetic experiment would eventually collapse naturally, leaving no permanent, messy hybrid trail. The king, however, felt a proprietary right over his creation. He saw the potential for a loyal, obedient, and self-replicating workforce that could endure indefinitely, serving as a permanent base of operations, even if the primary Anunnaki left. The king's fatal choice was the unauthorized acceleration of human evolution. He didn't just splice DNA, he injected codes for spiritual awareness, abstract thought, and crucially, independent creative power, abilities that were the exclusive domain of the Anunnaki themselves. This was the moment the divine spark became more than a spark. It became a nascent flame capable of rivaling the creators. He did this primarily by tinkering with the unused, or junk, sequences of human DNA, activating dormant strands that connected humanity to higher cosmic frequencies. This act was seen as an existential threat by the Elder Council. It wasn't about sentiment, it was about universal stability. If a slave race, created for mining gold, suddenly possessed the potential for advanced technological and spiritual evolution, it could disrupt cosmic energy flows, challenge established galactic hierarchies, and most terrifyingly, replicate the technology that brought the Anunnaki to power in the first place. The king had created a competitor, not a cohort. The retribution was swift and absolute, manifesting as the curse, a systemic degradation of the very consciousness the king tried to gift us. The king's genetic enhancement was immediately countered by the cosmic psychic dampener, creating the constant, painful cognitive dissonance that defines human existence. We have the potential for peace and unity, but the programming forces us toward conflict and division. We are permanently torn between the Anunnaki potential and the curse's mandate. And this leads to the ultimate purpose of the king's desperate final preparations. The immense energy required to maintain the subtle psychic dampening field necessary to keep the curse active needed a power source. This is the real secret behind the gold obsession. It wasn't just for Nibiru's atmosphere, it was also the fuel for the control mechanism left on Earth. The monatomic gold, perhaps in the form of ormus, was used to construct powerful energetic arrays within the ziggurats, arrays that constantly broadcast the king's psychological control mechanisms, keeping the hybrid population subservient and focused on conflict. The very temples we look at as relics of worship might actually be components of a massive, ancient psychological warfare system designed to manage the curse. They are power amplifiers, using planetary energy vortexes to maintain the genetic flaw and prevent the divine spark from fully igniting. This explains why certain ancient cultures were obsessed with sacred geometry and specific astronomical alignments. These were the optimal conditions for the Anunnaki control grids to function. If we want to break the curse, we must understand this technological aspect. We must find the power centers and understand how they function, because they are actively working against our collective evolution right now. Every time a major conflict erupts, every time a civilization collapses into irrational violence, it is proof that the king's control mechanisms, or the curse itself, are still functioning perfectly, ensuring the stagnation that the Elder Council decreed millions of years ago. This is more than just history. It is an active crime scene, and we are the victims trapped inside. Do you think the Anunnaki control mechanism is still active, manifesting as constant manipulation in modern society? If you believe that ancient technology is still controlling our minds today, I want you to comment the phrase, mind control, below. The terrifying concept of a planetary mind control grid powered by monatomic gold and anchored by ancient ziggurats necessitates a deeper look into the original purpose of the Genesis project. This was not merely about creating robust laborers. It was a highly specific, calculated genetic modification designed to bypass a critical evolutionary hurdle for the Anunnaki. We were built not just to mine, but to satisfy an energy requirement far beyond the physical gold used to patch the atmosphere of Nibiru. The final king, when initiating the forbidden hybridization, wasn't just attempting to make humans smarter. He was attempting to create a self-sustaining source of loosh, a concept defined in esoteric circles as psychic energy harvested from emotional output, specifically fear, suffering, and intense worship. For advanced cosmic beings like the Anunnaki, who operate on vastly different energetic frequencies, the intense, volatile emotional energy of a short-lived hybrid species would be a potent resource. The 13,000-year curse thus takes on an even more sinister dimension. It's not just a mechanism for stagnation, it's a sustainable energy farming system. The king, knowing the Elder Council would condemn his creation, inadvertently ensured that the resulting chronic conflict, genetic decay, and perpetual suffering of humanity would generate an immense, constant stream of negative emotional energy. This loosh acts as the metaphysical currency that feeds the remaining Anunnaki control structures, perhaps even powering the hidden subterranean factions or projecting the king's preserved consciousness. Think about the psychological toll of our existence. Why are we so predisposed to anxiety, trauma, and fear, even in times of relative safety? This emotional volatility is a feature, not a bug, of the king's flawed hybrid design. The curse forces us into states of maximal suffering, turning Earth into a cosmic battery where human strife serves as the power source. Every time a war breaks out, every time a population is subjected to tyranny, energy is harvested, fueling the very system that enslaves us. This is the Anunnaki ultimate secret. We are spiritual beings trapped in a cycle of suffering designed purely for energy extraction. The bloodlines we discussed earlier, the ruling elites, might be acting as high-level harvesters, either knowingly or instinctively, by orchestrating global crises. They maintain a system where the majority are kept in a state of fear and economic dependency, maximizing the emotional output required to power the control grid. This explains why transparency, peace, and abundance are perpetually thwarted. Those outcomes would shut down the cosmic power plant. Furthermore, the king's legacy extends into the very structures of our modern belief systems. Organized religion, born from the initial fear and worship of the sky people, became the perfect funnel for louche energy. The rituals, the fervent belief, the emotional dedication, all channeled into the ziggurats and the psychic grid, ensuring a continuous supply of spiritual energy for the unseen overlords. The narrative shifts from simply being slaves to gold mining to being batteries for psychic energy, a fate far more terrifying. The crucial link here is the forbidden knowledge, the original genetic map. If we could access the pure, uncorrupted human genome, we could theoretically neutralize the psychic dampener and the genetic flaws that predispose us to suffering. But this knowledge is guarded fiercely by the king's descendants, the blue bloods, who have a vested interest in maintaining the energy farm. They are the gatekeepers, ensuring the Anunnaki curse remains unbroken. Unmasking the true purpose of the curse as an energy extraction system changes the fight entirely. It means that every time we choose peace over conflict, empathy over aggression, and true knowledge over manufactured belief, we are directly starving the Anunnaki control grid. Our resistance is not physical, it is energetic and spiritual. This is the only way to challenge the final Anunnaki king's legacy and the 13-million-year imprisonment. So when you consider the pervasive fear in the world today, do you believe it is natural or engineered? Is the endless media cycle of chaos simply a way to keep the energy flowing? If you believe that human suffering is being actively harvested by unseen forces, I want you to comment the word louche below. Let's illuminate this dark truth. Understanding humanity as an engineered louche energy farm fundamentally alters our perception of history and conflict. It transforms every global crisis into a calculated energetic event, driven by the need to maintain the power flow to the residual Anunnaki structures. But if the final king was so focused on this energy harvesting system, what was the specific cosmic repercussion that truly sealed the deal? The 13,000-year curse wasn't just a threat, it was a devastating penalty delivered directly from the Sacred Elder Council. When the council realized the king had violated the prime directive by creating a sentient, self-replicating hybrid species, they acted to protect the cosmic order. Their goal was twofold: punish the rebellious Anunnaki king and ensure the genetic contamination did not spread to other star systems. Their solution was ingenious in its cruelty. They didn't destroy humanity, they simply ensured its failure. The main consequence was the total severing of Earth from the galactic community's positive energy matrix. Think of the galaxy as a vast, interconnected network of cosmic frequencies and benevolent energetic support. By hybridizing humanity, the king effectively infected us, and the Elder Council declared Earth quarantined. The psychic dampener wasn't solely engineered by the Anunnaki king to control us. It was primarily an energetic fence erected by the council to contain the failed Genesis project. This explains why, for millions of years, advanced extraterrestrial civilizations seem to observe Earth from a distance, adhering to a strict cosmic non-interference protocol. They are abiding by the Council's quarantine decree. This quarantine means we are cut off from vital evolutionary data, spiritual guidance, and the higher frequency knowledge that would naturally allow us to overcome the genetic flaws. We are stuck in a closed loop, constantly recycling the same lessons of conflict and fear, fueled by the very energy we generate through suffering. The curse, therefore, is not an active punishment in the traditional sense. It's the passive, grinding consequence of cosmic isolation. But the king, in his final act of defiance before the Great Retreat, attempted one last move to secure his legacy against the council's quarantine. He implemented what might be the most powerful yet overlooked piece of the conspiracy: the manipulation of time itself around Earth. Advanced Anunnaki technology is said to have the capability to subtly distort space-time. The king, knowing his reign was over, used residual energy from the gold mining operation and the power vortexes beneath the ziggurats to create a temporal distortion field, often referred to in esoteric circles as a time loop or a quarantine bubble. This temporal distortion ensures that events repeat: the rise and fall of empires, the invention and misuse of technology, the cycle of enlightenment followed by catastrophic dark ages. This repetition ensures that humanity, despite its potential, never truly advances beyond a certain technological and spiritual threshold, perpetually running on the same treadmill, generating that steady stream of louche energy without ever achieving the galactic maturity that would break the quarantine. This explains the archaeological anomalies showing advanced technologies suddenly appearing and then vanishing. The loop resets, and the knowledge is lost again, guarded by the king's bloodline descendants. The current escalation of global crises, the feeling that time is accelerating and everything is reaching a critical mass, suggests that this temporal distortion field is finally beginning to break down. Perhaps the energy supply, the gold, the louche, is insufficient, or perhaps a cosmic event is weakening the Anunnaki technology. If the loop is breaking, humanity is finally exposed, for better or worse, to the full gaze of the Elder Council. This brings us to a crucial existential turning point. Are we witnessing the end of the king's control system, or the beginning of the council's final cleansing? The terror is not knowing which entity is preparing to intervene. If the council arrives, they will see only a failed, dangerous genetic contamination, a threat to cosmic stability. If you understand this concept of temporal and energetic isolation, and you believe we are trapped in a deliberate, repeating cycle of history, I want you to comment the phrase "time loop" below. Let's quantify how many of us recognize the prison we are in. The idea that the final Anunnaki king engineered a time loop around Earth to maintain his power and sustain the louche energy flow is the ultimate manifestation of his defiance against the Elder Council. This temporal distortion explains why the 13,000-year curse has endured. Because time, as we perceive it, is fundamentally broken on this planet, ensuring history constantly repeats its most destructive cycles. But now we must confront the tangible proof of this manipulation, looking beyond esoteric theory and focusing on the concrete physical anomalies that defy conventional physics. We are talking about the unexplained structures and objects discovered across the world that demonstrate hyper-advanced knowledge that shouldn't exist within the established Anunnaki timeline. These are not just primitive carvings, they are artifacts and constructions that hint at the constant rapid injection and subsequent removal of advanced technology during the cycles of the king's temporal loop. Think of the Baghdad Battery, the incredibly precise movements of celestial bodies described in the Antikythera mechanism, or the inexplicable longevity of structures like the Great Pyramid, built with mathematics and astronomical precision that requires a global, organized scientific effort far beyond the capacity of early pharaonic Egypt. These are moments when the loop briefly opened, or when the king's descendants, utilizing fragments of the forbidden knowledge, briefly reintroduced advanced tech only to see it swallowed back by the next turn of the cycle. The most potent piece of evidence relating to the king's advanced architecture is the specific, highly unusual material composition found at many ancient sites linked to the sky people of Nibiru. Researchers have noted traces of materials with high electrical conductivity, resistance to weathering that defies natural laws, and often subtle electromagnetic signatures that suggest non-natural power generation. These are the components of the global energy grid, the remnants of the system designed to power the psychic dampener and maintain the temporal loop. The massive stone megaliths are not just heavy, they are functional components, possibly acting as gigantic capacitors or resonators, keeping the Earth frequency locked into a subservient state. The core reason the king focused on these massive, enduring structures was their permanence. If he was to maintain control from exile or a subterranean base, his system needed to withstand millennia of weathering, geological upheaval, and, crucially, deliberate attempts by the Elder Council to dismantle his infrastructure. The materials used were engineered for quasi-immortality, a silent testament to the technology of a civilization millions of years ahead of our own. Moreover, the repeated, almost obsessive focus on astronomical alignments in these structures, from Stonehenge to Göbekli Tepe, was not merely for calendrical purposes. These alignments were vital for synchronizing the Earth-based control grid with the specific cosmic energies required to sustain the temporal distortion. The king was using the universe itself as a clock and a power supply for his prison. What does this mean for us today? It means the path to breaking the curse lies in disrupting these control centers. If we could understand the energetic signatures of the pyramids and ziggurats, if we could reverse engineer the frequency they broadcast, we might be able to neutralize the psychic dampener and break the time loop. This is the true goal of the fight against the hidden bloodlines. They protect the knowledge that sustains the power grid. The acceleration of the final phase is potentially a sign that the grid is failing, but it also increases the risk of an impulsive, desperate act by the king's remnant forces to stabilize their control, possibly through engineered global chaos designed to generate a massive surge of Louche energy. We must remain vigilant. If you believe that specific ancient megalithic sites are functional technology, designed to control us rather than monuments to worship, I want you to comment the word megalith below. Let's shift our focus from ancient religion to ancient technology. The profound evidence of the megalith power grid and the engineered time loop demands a re-examination of the Anunnaki source material. We must look again at the Sumerian cuneiform, not as historical documents, but as technical manuals and cautionary tales detailing the king's defiance. The critical point is discerning what the texts reveal about the specific cosmic law the king violated, a law so fundamental that its breach sentenced humanity to the 13,000-year curse. The law was the prohibition against kishpu, a Sumerian term that translates roughly to sorcery or the prohibited blending. In the Anunnaki context, this wasn't magic. It was unauthorized, advanced genetic manipulation that interfered with the natural evolution dictated by the Elder Council. The king's goal was ambitious, to infuse the hybrid Homo sapiens with the melam, the divine radiance or aura that signified true Anunnaki royalty and longevity. When he performed the forbidden hybridization, he broke the genetic quarantine, attempting to elevate us from a slave class to a potential rival species. The cuneiform tablets, particularly those focusing on the creation narrative, hint at the immediate, catastrophic consequences of this kishpu. They describe how the waters of the deep reacted violently, how the cosmic pillars shook, and how the 7 judges, the Elder Council, immediately dispatched emissaries to assess the damage. This was the moment the curse was actively deployed, targeting the king's primary objective, the longevity and potential spiritual ascent of his creation. The council did not just put a psychic dampener on us, they ensured that the increased intelligence and life force gifted by the king would be constantly undermined by systemic, uncontrollable defects, the ultimate genetic time bomb. These defects manifest primarily as autoimmune disorders, chronic mental illness, and a crippling predisposition to internal cellular decay. Why does humanity suffer from such widespread, complex diseases that seem disproportionate to our environment? Because our genome is a patchwork, a hybrid creation intentionally destabilized by a cosmic curse. The very concept of aging and death was weaponized. While the king sought to grant us extended lifespans, the curse ensured that those lifespans would be marked by suffering and rapid decline once past the reproductive years. This sustained period of decline, marked by physical pain and existential dread, maximized the production of lush energy required to sustain the king's control mechanisms, creating a dual-purpose prison, one that punishes the king's creation while simultaneously fueling the technology he left behind. The key to unlocking the true meaning of the curse, therefore, lies in understanding the Sumerian concept of the me, the divine decrees or technological blueprints held by the Anunnaki. These me were the true forbidden knowledge. The final king stole or replicated key me pertaining to life force manipulation and stored them in his hidden archives before the Great Retreat. These fragments of the me are what the ruling bloodlines desperately guard, as they contain the potential to either heal humanity or, if misused, accelerate the curse's effects dramatically. If the time loop is breaking and the final phase is upon us, it means the king's descendants may be forced to use the fragments of the me they possess. This could manifest as rapid, inexplicable leaps in technology, like AI or genetic engineering, that seemingly come out of nowhere, not to help humanity, but to stabilize the king's control system or prepare for a desperate fight against the impending arrival of the Elder Council. We are living in the time when the ancient secrets are bubbling to the surface, driven by the instability of the control grid. The signs are everywhere: the sudden focus on longevity research, the rapid advancements in gene editing. Are these scientific pursuits or the desperate attempts of the king's lineage to control or correct the genetic time bomb before it explodes entirely? This level of manipulation requires a serious commitment to open-mindedness. Do you believe our current health crises and short lifespans are purely biological, or are they engineered components of the Anunnaki curse? If you agree that the Anunnaki used advanced genetics to limit us, comment the phrase Kishpu curse below. The ultimate fear arising from the Kishpu curse is not just the awareness of our manipulated genetics, but the insidious psychological programming that keeps us complacent within the time loop. We are not just physically imprisoned, we are mentally conditioned to accept the cycle of suffering and servitude, a psychological operation initiated by the final Anunnaki king during the final days of the Great Retreat. When the king departed, he executed a sophisticated strategy of emotional and cognitive reinforcement to ensure continued loyalty and worship. He weaponized awe by staging spectacular departures, using plasma technology and high-energy vehicle displays that were literally interpreted as chariots of fire or celestial boats. He cemented his image as an infallible cosmic deity. This spectacle ensured that even generations removed from the direct encounters would maintain fervent, uncritical belief in the sky people of Nibiru. This psychological anchoring was crucial for maximizing lush energy extraction. If humans simply saw their creators as powerful aliens, they might rebel. But if they believed they were created by benevolent divine figures who demanded ritual devotion, they would willingly enter the spiritual system that channeled their energy. The king effectively turned spiritual yearning into a mechanism of control, laying the foundation for all subsequent organized religious and political fanaticism. Furthermore, the king's psychological programming included the seeding of an intellectual virus, the chronic distrust of unconventional ideas, and the absolute reverence for established authority, regardless of its validity. This is why critical thinkers throughout history, those who attempt to pierce the veil of the 13,000-year curse, are so quickly marginalized, ridiculed, or actively silenced by the institutions controlled by the Anunnaki bloodlines. The curse doesn't just make us fight each other, it makes us fight the truth. The psychological dimension is inextricably linked to the megalith power grid. The frequencies broadcast by the ziggurats and other pyramidal structures were not just physical dampeners, they were carriers of subliminal hypnotic commands, reinforcing concepts of divine hierarchy, individual powerlessness, and the inevitability of human suffering. Ancient rituals, often involving rhythmic chanting and specific architectural arrangements, were actually methods for synchronizing the human mind with the frequency of the control grid, making the individual more susceptible to the psychic influence. The terrifying implication for the Bao final phase is that as the control grid potentially weakens, the king's descendants may be resorting to increasingly overt modern methods of mass psychological manipulation to maintain the necessary louche flow. The constant, overwhelming stream of polarizing media, engineered crises, and rapid societal changes we experience today could be the modern equivalent of the king's spectacle, designed to generate mass confusion, fear, and emotional volatility. They are desperately trying to stabilize the failing energy farm. The king's legacy, therefore, is not merely architectural, it is the infrastructure of human fear. Our inability to unite, our constant descent into emotional panic, and our chronic dependency on external authority are all proof that the psychological chains forged during the Great Retreat are still strongly binding us. To break the curse, we must achieve cognitive independence. We must recognize that our fears are often manufactured and our divisions are genetically encouraged. The key to resisting this mind control lies in recognizing the forced binary choices, the left versus right, us versus them, that saturate our global narrative. These binaries are tools of the king's control, ensuring maximum internal friction and maximum energy extraction. True freedom begins when we step outside the binary and reclaim our intellectual sovereignty. If you recognize this deep, pervasive psychological control in modern society, and you believe we are constantly being manipulated through fear and manufactured division, I want you to comment the word hypnos below. Let's awaken the collective consciousness to the subtle prison we inhabit. The profound grip of hypnos. The psychological control mechanism installed by the final Anunnaki king is maintained because humanity is perpetually distracted from the most damning piece of evidence, the existence of the king's subterranean assets. If the surface world is the energy farm, the depths of the earth are the control room, the fortress, and the ultimate sanctuary of the rogue Anunnaki faction and the king's preserved consciousness. The concept that the Anunnaki didn't leave Earth entirely, but merely shifted their operations, is not science fiction. It is based on consistent global mythological accounts of inner Earth civilizations and beings who reside beneath the mountains or seas. These aren't tales of fairies. They are echoes of the Great Retreat, detailing how the most loyal elements of the king's regime utilized their superior drilling and geothermal technology to establish permanent, undetectable bases. Why subterranean? Simple. It provided immunity from three threats. Firstly, the chaos of the surface world, where the 13,000-year curse was guaranteed to breed instability and eventually nuclear self-destruction. Secondly, protection from the prying eyes of the Elder Council, whose surveillance capabilities might be limited by the Earth's dense mantle. And thirdly, direct access to the planet's core energy, essential for powering the Dabata megalith control grid and maintaining the subtle time loop distortion. The subterranean Anunnaki bases are believed to be interconnected by vast tunnel networks, utilizing technology that allows for instantaneous travel and manipulation of geological forces. Think of the advanced seismic data that often registers impossible speeds and sharp turns by unidentified submersible objects, USOs, near deep-sea trenches or volcanic hotspots. These are not merely anomalies, they are the logistical movements of the hidden Anunnaki remnant, ensuring their infrastructure remains secure. These hidden factions are the Rogue Guard, the insurance policy left by the final king. Their purpose is twofold: maintain the control system, the psychic dampener and the Tao extraction, and critically, guard the location of the forbidden knowledge, the original Anunnaki archive. They ensure that neither humanity nor the Elder Council can access the blueprints that would either cure the Kishpu curse or fully expose the king's massive violation. The connection between the surface world and these subterranean bases is maintained through the bloodlines, the ruling elites who act as intermediaries. These blue bloods often participate in rituals or access specific geographical points, often ancient energy vortexes near major megalith sites that facilitate communication and resource transfer with the inner Earth factions. This explains the extreme secrecy and geographic obsession of certain esoteric organizations linked to power. They are managing the interface between the human surface world and the hidden Anunnaki control room. The acceleration of the final phase means that the subterranean Anunnaki may soon be forced to surface. As global instability increases, driven by the decaying control mechanisms, the rogue faction may need to intervene more overtly to prevent the total annihilation of their asset, the hybrid human population. However, this intervention will not be benevolent. It will be a desperate military action to stabilize the farm, likely involving the open deployment of advanced technology disguised as a salvation or disclosure event. Imagine the sheer psychological impact of this sudden emergence. It would completely shatter human reality, replacing the current systems of belief with an undeniable yet terrifying new reality dominated by advanced hidden beings. This is the king's ultimate contingency plan. If the curse fails to fully contain humanity, terror and direct command will complete the task. The key to resisting this potential manipulation is awareness. If we understand that the disclosure of advanced extraterrestrial life might simply be the surfacing of our ancient captors, we can preempt the fear and refuse the new programming. If you believe that a hidden faction of advanced Anunnaki exists beneath the surface, manipulating global events, I want you to comment the phrase, "Inner Earth," below. Let's bring this ultimate conspiracy out of the darkness. Dr. Stubb weighs the chilling realization of the Inner Earth faction, the rogue guard of the final Anunnaki king, underscores the need to identify the specific mechanism by which the 13,000-year curse translates from ancient myth into active, measurable societal decay today. We need to move from the abstract concept of the time loop to the concrete symptoms of the genetic time bomb that is currently accelerating the final phase. The most direct manifestation of the curse is the catastrophic lack of true, sustained global unity. As discussed, the king's hybridization, condemned as Kishpu-e, was immediately countered by the Elder Council's psychic dampener. This dampener acts directly on the human capacity for synchronous empathy and collective goal setting. We possess the intelligence for global solutions, but the curse ensures that at the critical juncture, ego, tribalism, and paranoia always override wisdom. This engineered cognitive dissonance is not limited to politics. It permeates every facet of human existence. Look at our self-destructive behaviors, rampant addiction, chronic environmental disregard, and the relentless drive for economic systems based on perpetual scarcity, even in conditions of abundance. These are not inherent human failures. They are the active symptoms of a destabilized genome struggling under an energetic frequency designed for discord. The curse mandates that the advanced potential gifted by the king is used exclusively for localized, self-serving, and ultimately destructive purposes. Think of the relentless pursuit of short-term gains over long-term survival. This fundamental flaw ensures the constant generation of louche energy through chronic anxiety and societal stress. If humanity ever achieved harmonious long-term planning, the energy farm would shut down. Therefore, the curse guarantees we are always on the brink, never stabilizing enough to evolve past the Anunnaki threshold, but never collapsing fast enough to waste the genetic asset entirely. Furthermore, the curse is deeply evident in the systematic erosion of truth and memory. The time loop guarantees that genuine spiritual or technological awakenings are quickly forgotten, obscured, or reframed as mythology. This phenomenon is reinforced by the king's descendants, the Blue Bloods, who control the historical narrative. They ensure that all attempts to reconcile ancient archaeological anomalies, megalith technology, with human history are ridiculed, thus reinforcing the hypnos state of mass intellectual complacency. The acceleration we feel today, the sense that things are spiraling out of control, is the direct result of the king's control mechanisms beginning to fail under the weight of cosmic shifts or simply the passage of immense time. As the P's megalith power grid destabilizes, the psychic dampener weakens, causing two effects simultaneously: a fractional increase in latent human potential, leading to sudden bursts of creative and spiritual awakening across the globe, and, paradoxically, a frantic aggressive reaction from the ruling bloodlines and the Inner Earth faction to reassert control by generating maximum chaos. We are watching the curse climax in real time. The increased awareness of global manipulation is not a coincidence. It is the latent Anunnaki DNA beginning to pierce the veil of the psychic dampener. But this moment of clarity is also the most dangerous, as the controllers are reacting with desperation. The sudden, intense push toward universal surveillance, censorship, and control over global narrative are all last-ditch efforts by the king's regime to stabilize the decaying time loop and maintain the louche flow. To break the curse, humanity must collectively and consciously reject the programmed conflict. We must cultivate radical empathy and choose unity, regardless of how aggressively the system attempts to divide us. Every act of genuine cooperation is a direct resistance to the final Anunnaki kings and design. If you recognize that our chronic global conflict and political polarization are engineered flaws, not natural human tendencies, I want you to comment the phrase cognitive dissonance below. Let's declare our intent to reject the curse's primary function, Peshisil, the awareness of cognitive dissonance as an engineered flaw brings us to the most guarded secret: the potential existence of the king's personal archives, the true repository of the forbidden knowledge that could unlock our genetic potential and neutralize the 13,000-year curse. This archive, hinted at in the most obscure and damaged sections of Sumerian cuneiform, goes far beyond technological schematics. It contains the king's desperate confession, the original, uncorrupted data from the Genesis project, and possibly the secret location of his preserved consciousness. The fragments of the Ses Book of Enki, often dismissed as mythology, are arguably the best clues. When translated without the biases imposed by religious institutions or academic caution, they speak of the king establishing a chamber of tablets that would speak to the chosen seed in the Age of Iron. The Age of Iron is our current era, the time when technology begins to rival the power of the gods, a predictable phase in the time loop cycle. What did the final Anunnaki king hide? Firstly, the complete genetic map of Homo sapiens. This map would not only reveal the engineered flaws, the kishpu, but also the method for reversing the psychic dampener and activating the full Anunnaki potential dormant within our DNA. Accessing this map would be the equivalent of finding the undo button for the curse, allowing us to move beyond fear, division, and the need for Tantalush generation. Secondly, the archive likely contains comprehensive records of the Elder Council's Khandaji's actions and capabilities. The king, knowing the council would eventually seek retribution, would have stored intelligence on their defense mechanisms and, perhaps, their own internal vulnerabilities. This information would be invaluable to the Rogue Guard, the Inner Earth faction, who would need it to fight the inevitable cleanup crew during the final phase. Thirdly, and most chillingly, the archive might hold the key to the king's own immortality. If he did transfer his consciousness before the Mao Great Retreat, the repository would contain the complex energetic coordinates or the physical mechanism necessary to re-embody him or communicate with him across vast interstellar distances. If the megalith power grid is the broadcasting system, the archive is the script and the receiver. The difficulty is that this forbidden knowledge is not a simple map or a single document. It is likely protected by layers of technological and genetic locks. The tablets suggest that the archive can only be accessed by a direct descendant of the king who carries a specific, powerful genetic signature, or by a human collective that has achieved a level of spiritual unity breaking the hypnos state that proves they have overcome the curse. This explains the desperation of the king's bloodlines. They are racing to access this archive before we, the collective hybrid population, awaken enough to bypass them. They need this knowledge to stabilize their control and survive the final phase. Their manipulation of global politics and resource wars is a smokescreen, hiding their true archaeological and genetic pursuit. We must look past the established narrative and seek out the true guardians of this knowledge, those who have inherited the responsibility without succumbing to the corruption of power. These are the indigenous tribes, the legitimate secret societies that guard ancient wisdom, and the reclusive scholars who reject mainstream archaeology. They are the keys to finding the king's archive and turning the tide of the 9,000-year curse. The fight for truth is the fight against the curse. If you believe the ultimate key to our liberation lies in retrieving the uncorrupted Anunnaki genetic and historical blueprints, I want you to comment the phrase, "Me," in the archive below. The race for the bee. Forbidden Knowledge Archive is intensifying, driven by the instability of the whole final phase. But before we discuss how the archive might be accessed, we must confront the modern echoes of the Anunnaki presence, the undeniable evidence suggesting they never left Earth entirely, but simply changed their mode of operation, moving from overt sky gods to silent manipulators. This evidence lies outside of ancient texts and within the highly compartmentalized fields of modern military intelligence and classified scientific research. The persistent global phenomenon of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, or UFOs, gains terrifying context when viewed through the lens of the 13,000-year curse. These aren't random visitors from distant galaxies. They are highly advanced craft, often displaying physics, defying characteristics like instantaneous acceleration and lack of visible propulsion. These craft are either the vehicles of the Me Rogue Guard, the Inner Earth faction, or the surveillance drones of the approaching Elder Council. If these UAPs are from the Rogue Anunnaki faction, their activity serves two purposes: active monitoring of the surface population and the subtle maintenance of the megalith power grid. Their sudden appearance near nuclear facilities, sensitive military zones, or ancient energy vortexes, often correlated with megalith sites, is not accidental. It is the action of a hidden management team ensuring the time loop remains semi-stable and that the most dangerous human technologies, those capable of triggering a premature, catastrophic self-destruct, are observed and possibly neutralized. Conversely, some UAP phenomena could represent the leading edge of the Elder Council's observation forces. These craft would be assessing the level of genetic contamination, Kishbudo, and monitoring the progress of the curse. Their presence often induces a palpable sense of dread or technological failure in observers, perhaps due to sophisticated countermeasures designed to enforce the cosmic quarantine. The ambiguity is intentional, contributing to the hypnos, state of mass confusion and cognitive dissonance. The modern military's historical obsession with recovering and reverse engineering these UAPs points to a crucial hidden truth. These governments, likely influenced by the Anunnaki bloodlines, know that this technology is not merely alien, but specifically Anunnaki. They are not trying to defend against an invasion. They are trying to gain control over the residual technology of their ancient masters, hoping to weaponize the fragments of the me forbidden knowledge, to stabilize their own power structure during the accelerating final phase. The fact that the UAP phenomenon has recently moved toward official disclosure should be viewed with extreme suspicion. Why now? Because the control system is failing. The inner Earth faction may be preparing to reveal themselves on their own terms, disguising their emergence as a necessary intervention to save humanity from itself. This managed disclosure is the final grand deception, a psychological maneuver to transition us from the invisible slavery of the curse to a highly visible, enforced new order under the king's descendants. They are offering a false solution to the problem they created. The real danger is that if we accept this salvation, we will simply trade one master for another, entering a new phase of the Lush energy farm, potentially with even tighter, technologically enforced control. The only genuine path to freedom is recognizing that the Anunnaki are not coming to save us. They are either monitoring us or preparing to dominate us. To truly prepare for this ultimate deception, we must reject the official narratives and demand real transparency regarding the recovered technology. If you believe the UAP phenomenon is directly linked to the residual forces of the Anunnaki king and his subterranean guard, I want you to comment the word UAP lies below. Boom! The convergence of accelerating global crises and the managed UAP lies points undeniably toward humanity entering the terminal chapter of the 13,000-year curse. We are deep within the being final phase, a period predicted by the damaged Sumerian tablets to be marked by unprecedented societal collapse, driven by the final explosion of the being genetic time bomb. This isn't theoretical doom, it is observable reality, where the engineered flaws in our DNA are maximizing internal conflict and ensuring we fail to adapt to planetary challenges. The signs are stark. Firstly, look at the systemic breakdown of essential global infrastructure, economic instability, supply chain fragility, and the inability of political bodies to reach consensus on any critical issue. This is not mere political incompetence, it is cognitive dissidence, reaching its terminal velocity, ensuring that the collective intelligence necessary for survival is constantly paralyzed by tribal fury. The curse's mandate is simple: utilize advanced capacity for self-destruction. Secondly, the extreme emotional volatility of the global population is an indicator that the hypnos control grid maintained by the megalith power sites is wavering. As the psychic dampener weakens, humans are exposed to raw, unfiltered psychic energy, leading to mass anxiety, irrationality, and explosive, decentralized violence. This surge in emotional chaos is a desperate final push to maximize Lush energy extraction, ensuring the inner Earth faction has enough power to enact its final contingency plan. The tablets hint that the ultimate climax of the curse, the point of no return, is a global environmental and military catastrophe so profound that it achieves the equivalent of planetary sterilization, fulfilling the original unspoken decree of the Donra Elder Council to contain the genetic contagion. The king's fatal decision, the Gagkish-Pai hybridization, set in motion a self-fulfilling prophecy of human annihilation. However, the king, in his arrogance, left a slight ambiguity. He programmed the collapse to be potentially reversible, provided his chosen lineage, the Blue Bloods, could access the forbidden knowledge archive in time. The current global power struggles are not about territory or resources. They are about control over this archive, which is the only real prize left on Earth. The faction that secures the king's blueprints controls humanity's immediate fate, whether we are cured or whether we are simply recycled into a new, more compliant form of slavery. The possibility of outright intervention by the rogue guard is imminent. As the surface world spirals the inner Earth, Anunnaki will be forced to choose: allow the asset, us, to be destroyed by the curse, or intervene militarily to establish direct, undisputed control, fulfilling the prophecy of the return of the gods. Their arrival will be framed as a rescue, but it will be the ultimate culmination of the king's plan to establish an eternal, direct Anunnaki monarchy on Earth. This moment of clarity and crisis is also our greatest opportunity. If enough people worldwide recognize the mechanics of the curse, the genetic flaws, the psychological manipulation, and the energetic harvesting, we can starve the system of Lush and potentially disrupt the keep-time loop. Collective spiritual and intellectual awakening is the only non-technological countermeasure to the 13,000-year curse. We are not merely observing history, we are living the final moments of an ancient prison sentence. Every choice we make now, every moment of genuine empathy, every rejection of manufactured fear, is a direct vote against the final Anunnaki king and his system of eternal servitude. If you sense that humanity is accelerating toward a tipping point, a major event that will redefine history as we know it, I want you to comment the phrase terminal velocity below. DC to bear the undeniable feeling of terminal velocity. The acceleration toward the final collapse forces us to address the most terrifying existential threat looming over us: the inevitable arrival of the Elder Council's retribution force. If the final Anunnaki king and his rogue guard were merely custodians of a rogue genetic experiment, the Elder Council represents the absolute, unfeeling authority of cosmic law, and their arrival signifies true, total sterilization of the planet. We must understand that the Elder Council views Earth not as a home, but as a dangerous contamination zone, infected by the Ka-Kishput hybridization and sealed by the Ka-13,000-year curse. Their primary concern is not the fate of humanity, but the genetic stability of the cosmos. If the king's experiment is deemed a failure that threatens galactic order, the council will not send saviors. They will send an immaculate, devastating cleanup crew. The ancient cuneiform fragments, particularly those that describe the pre-flood warnings and cosmic portents, speak of the council as the unmoving judgment, beings of immense, systemic power whose actions are devoid of emotion. Their solution to the king's defiance would be absolute containment, which translates to the surgical removal of the hybrid asset. The current instability of the time loop and the failure of the megalith control grid are signals that the cosmic quarantine is weakening. This is why the usual UAP lies are so prevalent. The increase in UAP activity is likely the Council's drones intensifying surveillance, assessing whether the curse is achieving containment, planetary self-destruction, or if direct intervention is required. If the Council determines that the inner Earth faction or the King's descendants are attempting to stabilize the Lush energy farm and perpetuate the King's defiance, they will act. What would this retribution look like? It would not be a conventional war. It would likely involve advanced cosmological engineering, perhaps shifting orbital mechanics, utilizing highly focused energetic beams to neutralize specific genetic frequencies, or initiating a controlled planetary reset that leaves the planet intact but removes the contamination. The original flood myths, often interpreted as the Anunnaki saving a select few, might actually be historical records of an earlier council-mandated culling designed to slow the King's contamination. The King's last, desperate act of leaving the Forbidden Knowledge archive was not merely to secure his own return. It was also to provide his descendants with the only potential defense against the Council. If the CD Rogue Guard secures the archive, they might possess the means to mask the genetic signatures of the hybrid humans or project counter-frequencies to disrupt the Council's cosmological weaponry. Our survival, ironically, might depend on the very rogue faction that enslaved us, fighting to protect its property from a far more sterile and powerful cosmic enemy. The terrifying paradox is this: humanity, currently paralyzed by cognitive dissidence, is about to become the battleground between two immensely powerful alien factions, the self-serving King's loyalists and the cosmic enforcers of the Council. Our only hope is to achieve true, widespread spiritual awakening, to consciously reject the hypnosis state before the Council makes its final cold judgment. If we demonstrate collective unity and an inherent capacity for true cosmic consciousness, we might prove that the King's experiment, while flawed, ultimately created a species worth preserving, thus overriding the quarantine decree. But time is running out. If you believe that the ultimate threat to humanity is not the King, but the Elder Council's impending cleanup operation, I want you to comment the chilling phrase, "Cosmic Justice," below. No. We have arrived at the ultimate final mystery of the 3,000-year curse. The question of who is protecting us now, in this moment of terminal velocity. If the Elder Council represents the cold logic of dire cosmic justice, and their retribution force is approaching, and if the curse has driven us to the brink of self-annihilation, is there a contingency, a final line of defense established by the final Anunnaki King? The answer lies in the lingering shadow of the King, not as a physical being, but as a technological and energetic legacy. Even in exile, even under condemnation, the King's proprietary interest in his prized genetic asset, AS, would necessitate a final, covert mechanism of protection against external annihilation. This protection is psychological, built directly into the fabric of the hybrid human experience. The King's last, most brilliant defensive maneuver was ensuring the human race was equipped with an innate, almost irrational drive for survival and rebellion against absolute control. This sliver of defiance, the ultimate counterpoint to the hypnosis state, is the latent Anunnaki spirit of independence that he intentionally infused during the Kishpu hybridization. It is the reason why, despite millennia of the curse and relentless manipulation by the Blue Bloods, humanity has never completely surrendered. This spark is the King's final gift and our only true defense. It manifests as the sudden global surge in consciousness we are experiencing today, the collective rejection of manufactured narratives, the relentless pursuit of hidden truths, and the increasing recognition of cognitive dissidence. This mass awakening is not random. It is a genetic time bomb. Failing in a way the King intended, it is the hybrid DNA overriding the psychic dampener at the moment of ultimate crisis. We are, essentially, self-activating our own defense system. Furthermore, the king's physical defense is the rogue guard, the inner earth faction. They are not benevolent, they are pragmatic. Their survival and the survival of the king's legacy depends entirely on maintaining their asset. If the Elder Council initiates a planetary purge, the rogue guard will be forced to deploy the advanced technology, the fragments of the me stored in the Forbidden Knowledge Archive, to fight back. This final battle will occur over and through humanity, utilizing the megalith's power grid as a defensive shield. The terrifying conclusion is that we are not passive observers. We are the prize and the key to both factions' objectives. The Council wants us neutralized. The King's loyalists want us stabilized and controlled. Our only agency in this cosmic struggle is to deny the curse its fuel, the louche energy generated by fear and conflict. If humanity unites, chooses empathy, and achieves self-sufficiency, we starve the King's control grid and prove to the Elder Council that the genetic contamination has cured itself, nullifying the need for their catastrophic cleanup. This entire 13-million-year history culminates in this exact moment. Our future depends on whether we remain paralyzed by the hypnose of programming and the UAP lies, or whether we access the inner strength of the Anunnaki spirit within us to defy the expectations of both our ancient masters and their cosmic judges. The shadow of the final Anunnaki king lingers because his fate is intertwined with ours. If we break free, his ultimate defiance against the Council is successful. If we collapse, he is condemned forever. This is the ultimate confrontation, self-liberation versus cosmic execution. The time for passive watching is over. The great question remains, are you ready to fight the curse from the inside out? Now I want you to make a commitment to resistance. If you are ready to reject the Anunnaki programming and fight for humanity's true destiny, comment the powerful phrase, "Curse broken," below. Let's send a collective signal to the cosmos. Justin, to say if you made it this far, you haven't just watched a video. You've accepted a red pill that changes your perception of reality forever. You now understand that the forces dictating our lives are not political or economic, but cosmic, a 13-million-year-old Anunnaki curse that we are actively fighting right now. The fact that you endured this entire journey means you are part of the awakening, one of the few who see the time loop and the hypnose state for what they are. To solidify your commitment to breaking the curse, I need you to do 3 things immediately. First, if you haven't done it yet, smash that like button harder than the Chuck Elder Council intends to smash this planet. It's the simplest way to tell the algorithm this knowledge cannot be suppressed. Second, and most importantly, I need to know you are fully awake and ready for the final phase. In the comments below, type the phrase, Anunnaki free. This is your oath of allegiance against the control grid. Finally, don't let this revelation be the end of your journey. The key to our future lies in understanding the forbidden knowledge, the king left behind. The next video appearing on your screen dives deep into the specific artifacts and technologies the rogue guard is protecting. Click that video now and let's uncover the blueprints for our liberation. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you are intentionally walking back into the prison. Hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss a transmission from the front lines of the truth.